Have you seen the recent headlines? Britain could face blackouts. The electricity grid can't cope. Too many electric cars. Too many heat pumps. So, is any of this actually true? Today, we're going to take a step back and explain how the UK's electricity system actually works and why it's changing faster than at any point in the last 100 years. I'm Nick, and welcome back to Electrify My Life. Whenever people hear about electrification, the first question is usually, can the grid cope? It's a perfectly sensible question. To answer it, let's go back to the beginning. For most of the last century, electricity worked in a very simple way. We had a relatively small number of huge power stations, mainly coal, later gas, and then nuclear, and they generated electricity continuously. The electricity is transmitted across the country through the national grid at extremely high voltages, up to 400,000 volts. Now, high voltage means less energy is lost over the long distance. At major substations, huge transformers reduce the voltage so it can safely continue through the regional electricity networks. Now, near your home, a local substation reduces the voltage one final time from around 11,000 volts down to the 230 volts that powers your home. Years ago, electricity only flowed one way, from the power stations to your home. Today, many homes generate their own electricity with solar panels and can even send power back into the grid. And that's why Britain's electricity network is changing faster than at any time in its history. Simple, yes? Today, that picture is changing dramatically. Coal has almost disappeared. Instead, we're seeing huge offshore wind farms, large solar farms, battery storage, interconnectors bringing electricity from Europe, and increasingly thousands of homes generating their own electricity through rooftop solar. Instead of a few hundred large generators, we now have tens of thousands of smaller ones. Power no longer flows in just one direction. Sometimes your home is consuming electricity, and sometimes it's exporting electricity back into the network. That makes balancing the grid far more complicated, because here's something many people don't realize. Electricity isn't stored on the grid itself. Supply and demand have to be balanced almost instantly. Every single second, the amount being generated has to match the amount of people are using. If demand suddenly increases, more generation has to come online. If demand falls, generation has to reduce. National Grid does this balancing every second of every day. It's an incredible engineering achievement. So, where do the blackout stories come from? Well, there are really two different issues. The first is whether Britain can generate enough electricity. The second is whether the electricity can actually get to where it's needed. They're not always the same problem. So, for example, Scotland may have plenty of wind power on a windy day, but if the transmission lines south are already full, that electricity can't always reach the homes in England. That's why you'll often hear about new pylons, new substations, and upgrades to the transmission network. A great example of this is one of the biggest electricity projects the UK has ever undertaken. At the moment, Eastern Green Link 2 is a 2 gigawatt subsea electricity cable being installed down the east coast of Britain from Aberdeenshire to Drax in the North Yorkshire coast. These aren't just ordinary cables, they're high voltage direct current links capable of carrying enough electricity to power millions of homes. Now, why are they needed? Because Scotland has some of the best wind resources in Europe. On a windy day, Scottish wind farms generate far more electricity than Scotland itself needs. The challenge is getting that electricity to where the demand is, in cities right across the UK. Instead of building hundreds of miles of new overhead power lines, these new subsea cables carry renewable electricity beneath the North Sea directly into Yorkshire and the northeast of England. It's a huge engineering project costing billions of pounds, but it's a good example of how the grid is evolving. It's not just about generating more electricity, it's about transporting it efficiently to where it's needed. Now add in millions of electric vehicles, heat pumps, replacing gas boilers, battery storage, and more solar panels, and it's easy to see why engineers have such a huge job ahead of them. Think of the national grid like Britain's motorway network. If more and more traffic wants to travel from Scotland to England, you don't solve the problem by building more cars, you build bigger, faster roads. It's exactly the same with electricity. We can build all the wind farms we like, but unless we can move that electricity around the country, it can't be used where it's needed. And does that mean blackouts are inevitable? No. The National Grid has been planning for electrification for years. Billions of pounds have been invested in new transmission lines, substations, smart technology, and battery storage. Will there be challenges? Absolutely. Will there be delays? Probably. Will consumers notice the changes? Absolutely. But that's very different from saying Britain is about to run out of electricity. The reality is we're moving from a simple centralised electricity system to one that's much smarter, more flexible, and far more connected than ever before. It's one of the biggest engineering projects this country has ever undertaken. And over the next few years, we'll be part of that transition, whether we like it or not. It's the time frame that really affects us. So here's today's 1-minute electrification check. Go outside and have a look. Can you find the local electricity substation that supplies your street? Most people walk past them every day without giving them a second thought. Yet it's probably one of the most important pieces of infrastructure in your neighbourhood. In future videos, we'll explain why those substations are becoming increasingly important as more homes install heat pumps, EV chargers, and solar panels. If you've enjoyed today's video, please like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell somewhere down there, and let us know in the comments. Do you think the UK electricity grid is ready for an all-electric future, or do you think there's more investment needed? Do you think there's more time needed? Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next episode of Electrify My Life.